We've got a Thursday night showdown in the NFC South between the Falcons and the Bucs. Now, the Bucs have won this division 3 straight years, but the Falcons are still the favorite to win the division. We'll tell you why Baker Mayfield is just fine with that and why you might need to change your perspective on what you think of Kirk Cousins in primetime games. It's data, people, and we've got it on the Pregame PowerUp. Well, the all-time series between these two teams is 31-30 in favor of the Bucs. Last season, it was the road team that won each of these divisional matchups. Falcons and Bucs both come off Week 4 wins, but did it in very different fashions, and we're going to break it all down for you. Hi, everybody, and welcome into the Pregame PowerUp on DraftKings Network. Apologies to our cameraman, Howie, who I terrified with the Open, and probably all of America. I'm sorry. Trey Wingo here with Claudia Bellafato. We've got Emerson Latzia joining us from Atlanta. Marshall Newhouse will join us from wherever Marshall Newhouse lives. I don't want to give away his trade secrets, but we do have a few trade secrets on Marshall we're going to share with you. And speaking of trade secrets, young lady, Claudia, it looks like this line is moving in a very distinct direction heading into this game.
Yeah, early line was Falcons as the 3-point favorite. We saw some early Bucs money bring that number all the way down to 1.5. And of course, there was buyback, the number sitting around 2.5. So early Bucs money, buyback. As far as the total goes, open 44, under money down to as low as 42.5, a little money back up. The money line, though, is what's interesting to me. The Bucs money line seeing 62% of the handle, so that sharp money coming in on Baker and the Bucs.
Well, it's a real good thing that it's coming in on Baker and the Bucs, because if you think about it, that's exactly where it should be coming in, considering the way he plays. But don't take my word for it. Take the data. I will explain to you what I'm talking about as we look at what Baker Mayfield has done. Here's what Baker Mayfield has done, ladies and gentlemen. Over his last 12 games, played, Baker's 9-3 with 25 touchdown throws and only 7 interceptions. Let's put that in perspective. Here's the list of quarterbacks that have more touchdown passes over that time frame. Nobody! And only Patrick Mahomes, you may have heard of him, has more wins. Even though wins are not a quarterback stat, I will die on that hill. Baker is coming off a Week 4 win where he threw for 347 yards and a pair of scores over Philly, and have the Bucs sitting at 3-1 on the season. And he has really found himself a home in Tampa Bay. Since joining the Bucs, Baker loves this spot. Mayfield as an underdog is our power-up play. Since joining the Bucs, Mayfield has a winning record as an underdog at 8-7, and he's 11-4 against the spread. Overall, his record against the spread since last season is second best in the NFL, behind one Jared Goff and the Lions. And we talked about how incredible that was in the Monday night situation where we had the double dip that included Jared Goff and the Lions taking on the Seattle Seahawks. So for more on this, we want to get to Atlanta and check in with our own Emerson Latzia, who's standing outside Mercedes-Benz. Are you somewhere near Olympic Park, Emerson, as we get ready to roll in what we think will be a really good game?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've been in almost every park that you can imagine in downtown Atlanta over the past few days. I have made tons and tons of friends. You will meet some of them coming up later in this show. But going back to your point about Baker and the Bucs here, I know we're big on stats. I know we're big on data here on Pregame PowerUp. So the team that will score the most points tonight will win. Okay, that's not a spoiler alert. And it turns out the Bucs have scored more points than their opponent in 3 of 4 games this year. The one game they failed to do so, they lost. So Baker and company realizing they got to get out. They're good at starting fast, they're good at scoring first, and they're good at playing with a fiery edge. But don't take it from me, take it from Baker himself.
Yeah, it's huge, but it's not just for me, it's for everybody else too. You know, the O-line's able to settle in too. Getting your skill guys going early gives them confidence on certain concepts on a critical third down or in the red zone. So it's important for us just to start fast, and it's not, you know, whatever the scheme may be, however we want to attack a team, we just have to start fast and execute the plan at hand and go from there.
We just put a lot of emphasis on starting fast and coming out there as a team, everybody doing their individual jobs, focusing on the small details, third down, red zone, drive starters, things like that. Everybody was locked in.
So going back to game one, Bucs get up 13-0 on Washington. Then it's 6-0 week 2. Then it's 24-0 against the fraudulent Philadelphia Eagles in week 4. This is a team that knows what it is doing. And this one's for you, Claudia. How about this? Bucs plus 310 tonight to score on their first drive, either a field goal or a touchdown. Real quick, what do you think about that?
You're digging deep, man. I like the value, Emerson. I like it.
Yeah, I didn't dig deep for that. Our producers did 100% here. Yeah, so this is a late arriving crowd here, guys, and I was able to do some serious digging. I came across this website. I've never heard of it before, and it had Atlanta ranked in the bottom tier of best tailgaters in the NFL. And again, since I don't know if it was a real website or not, we decided to kind of float around the city yesterday, going back to all those parks I've been inside, and then some today. All right, we're going to do our own research. We're going to bring it to you coming up later in the show. So I look forward to talking to all of you once again momentarily. Trey?
All right, Emerson, thanks very much. It is indeed a magic city in Atlanta. There's no question about it. So let's take a look at the team that they're facing, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they are all kind of banged up going into this one. The Buccaneers are hurting. Look at this injury report. The right tackle out with a concussion. Their incredible safety, Antoine Winfield, out with a foot. Defensive lineman Cansey out with a calf. Jalen McMillan out with a hamstring. Trey Palmer ruled out with a concussion. And then, of course, one of their linebackers is also on injured reserve. Claudia, what do you make of all of this?
I will say, going up against the Eagles, and they bounced back from that Broncos, the loss against the Broncos.
Right.
All of those guys except for Palmer did not play. So it is a lengthy list, but I wouldn't read too much into that. With that, we go to first and trend. We just talked about how good Baker is in primetime games. The Bucs overall, though, not great. 3-13 ATS in the last 16 games. As far as the Falcons go, unders have hit in the 13 straight games. I didn't realize it was 13 straight. So unders clearly is the play there. And divisional favorites on Thursday nights, 13-3 straight up is the favorite since 2022. So if you'd like Atlanta, that might make you feel a bit better. And I feel like whenever we talk about Kirk Cousins, primetime games usually has something to do with it. Kirk Cousins, well documented to be struggling in primetime. He began his career 4-12 in primetime games. Overall, 18-24-1. ATS, he's 17-26. But hold on, people.
We're holding.
It's a new age.
We are holding.
It is a new age. Recently, Kirk has made strides to improve these numbers. Cousins, 8-4 straight up in primetime in his last 12 starts. 5-2 straight up in his last 7 home primetime games. He actually has the 5th highest passer rating in primetime since 2010 with a minimum of 25 starts. Covering the spread is still an issue though, 3-7 ATS over his last 10 in primetime, but I think it's safe to say, Trey, we have to change the narrative on Kirk in primetime.
Well, I think Kirk himself has already changed the narrative with those numbers. And I think the NFL schedule makers must have felt something like that because they're playing their 3rd primetime game in the first 5 weeks of the season. And one other thing about Cousins that people don't give him enough credit for, since 2021, nobody in the NFL has more game-winning drives than Kirk Cousins, 14. No one else has more than 11. One of those is Patrick Mahomes. But the other thing to keep in mind, he missed 9 games last year because of that Achilles heel or that Achilles tendon, and no one has been able to catch him on that front.
And also, completely new team, completely new system. After 6 years with one team, 6 years, he's only ever played for 2 teams outside of this one. So you add the age factor into it, the Achilles. All of that, of course, is a reason to maybe a slow start. But despite that, he has been playing well in primetime games. We'll see what happens tonight. I will say the pressure is one thing that worries me a bit. Against blitzes, 3rd worst completion percentage. The Bucs have the 4th highest blitz rate. They're not really getting home though, so we'll see what happens tonight. Yeah,
for more on that, and a guy that would know a lot about that is a guy who has to pick up the blitz. That's an offensive lineman. So let's bring in another member of our Pregame PowerUp crew, a longtime offensive lineman, Marshall Newhouse. That's how you know him. We know him, of course, as the 2006 UIL Texas State shot put champion at Lake Highlands High School. Listen, you didn't like the nickname the Beef Hammer, so I'm bringing other things to the table, Marshall. Here, okay? I went deep dive on you, but let's take a deep dive in this division, right? The Bucs are 3-1. They've won this thing the last 3 years, but the Falcons are still considered somewhat the favorites here. Is that right in your estimation?
I'm leading the Bucs here just from the recent history. They've won this division a few years in a row, and they're the one team from this division to actually make the playoffs and win a playoff game. And so you re-sign Baker Mayfield in the offseason, you kind of stabilize the quarterback position. So give me the Bucs. I think the Falcons and the Saints are of separation in this division, but for now, I stick with the Bucs.
Marshall, I want to stick to this trenches conversation. The Falcons right now are last in the NFL with only 4 sacks, lowest pressure rate at sub 23%, and they're facing a Baker Mayfield who's actually thrived when he's not facing pressure, producing the 4th highest success rate. When it comes down to that matchup, how big of a factor do you think that'll be tonight?
I mean, it's a big factor. I just don't think that it plays a lot with this matchup. Baker is a top 5 quarterback when the pocket is clean. I mean, he really gets rid of the ball. He's got around 2.5 time of release. So he's getting in his drop and he's getting the ball out of his hands. And that plays into him and his offense's hands, especially with their starting right tackle, Godeke out. Skule has been starting at right tackle. He's struggled a little bit. That's going to be more of an emphasis for Baker to get rid of the ball. And, this is a Falcons defense that's not been good with pressures and sacks. I mean, they traded for Matthew Judon in the offseason, and that hasn't produced a whole lot. And so all those things add up to, yes, it's still an important factor. I just don't see what trend changes tonight.
Well, you mentioned the lack of sacks. I mean, it's significant. As a team, they have 4. There are 4 players alone in the NFL that have more sacks than 4 on the season than the Falcons do as a team. But let's talk about the other quarterback here for a second, besides Baker Mayfield. Let's talk about Kirk Cousins here. We know he's coming off the injury. We know he's getting up there in age. Marshall, one thing that we notice when you look at how he's playing and what he's doing, or more specifically what he isn't doing, a league-high 93.8% of his dropbacks are still between the tackles as he's coming back from that Achilles. What does something like that tell you about what he can and cannot do still under a year removed from tearing that Achilles as a member of the Vikings against the Packers?
I mean, not only, him staying stationary in the pocket in these normal dropbacks, but the idea that he can't even get under center and consistently, without favoring his body, deliver just handoffs or boots out of play action. I mean, he's literally reversing out, which means if a run's going to the right to Bijan, getting to the mesh point, he's having to reverse out in the opposite direction just to push off his healthy Achilles to get the ball up there. And then not to mention, he's not booting out. They're not utilizing play action. They've tried to go under center, but they're regressing back to pistol and to more gun. And again, we've talked about this in past weeks, that not being able to vary your looks pre-snap lets defenses kind of hone in on you. And as competitive as the Falcons have been, they're not varying their offense as much. People are complaining both from a fantasy standpoint, but a production standpoint. Kyle Pitts is not involved in his offense. And so they have a lot of things that are just disjointed. And yet they're still 2-2. And so Kirk has had his struggles. I don't think it's going to get solved anytime soon. This is going to be a consistent journey for him as an older veteran quarterback coming off an Achilles injury.
I'm feeling a lot of negativeness around this Atlanta Falcons squad, despite them being the favorite in this spot. You just mentioned Bijan Robinson. This squad as a team only has 1 rushing touchdown right now, so the volume hasn't necessarily been there. How do you really get him going in a spot like this?
Well, you use his strengths, and his strengths aren't just running the ball out of the backfield. And that's what we talk about, the creativity to get the ball in his hands. They've committed to kind of using him and Tyler Algier out of the backfield as like a committee, almost in a snap count sort of sense. But Bijan Robinson can line up in the slot. He can catch screen passes. He can do a lot of things for you. And so he's the type of dynamic player that you force feed him the ball. You get him in screens on the wide receiver on the edge. You get him in end arounds. They've done stuff out of the Wildcat. And so he is that dynamic of a player, but it takes an intention from the offensive coordinator. I believe Zach Robinson is a good coordinator to do things like that. But again, it's all connected between Kirk and the play calling and his ability to get the ball in his playmaker's hands.
Marshall, thanks. We'll check back with you a little bit later on the show. Coming up, Kyle Pitts has been the poster boy for the struggles of this Atlanta offense. We'll take a closer look at how people are betting him tonight and talk with former Falcons wideout Mike Pritchard about the offense overall. Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. And we welcome you back to Pregame Power Up, presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. The Falcons got a huge division win last week over the Saints without even scoring an offensive touchdown. Defense and special teams accounted for all of their points. It was the first Falcon win with no offensive touchdown since Week 3 of the 2004 season against Arizona. Younghoe Koo kicked the game-winning 58-yard field goal, a personal best for him, with 2 seconds left to secure the 26-24 victory. So look, you win a game, you find a way to win. That's what you have to do in the NFL. That's very good. But the offense for the Atlanta Falcons has been very, very bad. I mentioned no offensive touchdowns last week. They have only scored 15 offensive points per game. That ranks them 26th in the NFL. They've averaged more passing yards actually last year with Desmond Ridder as the starting quarterback, and they paid Kirk Cousins all that money to come over and change that. That hasn't happened yet, but the Falcons say they're not concerned about their struggling offense.
It seems like we're just this close on a lot of things. It might be one thing here, you know, a missed throw, we're just not connecting on some things that execution-wise you would think, we'll just continue to build that with a new group, getting used to each other, the continuity, got a ton of faith. And, of course, it starts with us as coaches, just making sure that everything is super clear with these guys so that they can go execute.
You know, I know that it clicks, has clicked at some point, and we want it to click, as soon as possible. And, we're trying to make it click week to week. But, we're trying to do as much as we can to put the ball in the end zone every single week consistently.
4 games in, you do have a sample size to work off of. I think we've ascended each week. We have improved, which is encouraging. But I think there's more to go get. And that's why I think there is a lot of excitement about Thursday night, because we see it as another opportunity to kind of continue to improve.
Well, it would be an improvement if they would have Kyle Pitts in the offense.
That would help.
The tight
Yeah,
end. I
that
mean,
could help.
he threw up the donut last week, the big bagel.
Yeah.
0 fantasy points, and that got a lot of people upset. No one has represented the Falcons' offensive struggles more than tight end Kyle Pitts. Last week, again, 0 catches on 3 targets. He hasn't gone over his reception prop once this season. Cousins has a 68 passer rating targeting Atlanta tight ends this season. His rating was 95 or more targeting tight ends in every other season since 2015. So if you're looking for prop bets tonight, it doesn't seem like Kyle Pitts would be a big one unless they think they can take advantage of some of those linebackers being out for Tampa Bay.
Yes, that is definitely true. I also talked about the Bucs being blitz heavy in terms of the scheme. They're not really getting home, but maybe some of that pressure will open up the game for Pitts, those short yardage situations. I will say when it comes to the betting market, the odds have changed accordingly. Okay,
Yeah.
He opened at 40 when he averaged under 40 last year. They opened up week 1, 45.5 was his receiving yards prop. It's at 30.5 now, so they adjusted. Okay, when we're talking about catches, though, 2.5 is still juiced to the over, and that's why I say maybe they're just going to use him. Nothing explosive downfield, that's not the guy he is. But issues with separation, all of these things, of course, lead to these lower numbers. When it comes down to it, too, just very simply in football, you need targets, and he's the 5th option right now when it comes to targets on this squad.
Well, not only that, but you have Bijan Robinson who has 70 touches on the season, but only 70 in the in the red zone. That is absolutely killing people when they pick Bijan Robinson 2nd overall.
I will say, too, Bijan has drove people crazy over the last few years, and that was supposed to be the narrative around Kirk Cousins coming to the Falcons. He'll be able to bring out this talent of these younger players, and it hasn't happened. But with Pitts specifically, too, the way he has played with tight ends, look at TJ Hawk. He had the 2nd most targets of any tight end when he was with him last year. So I do expect at some point for him to see a little bit more action. In this game, I don't know if that's the case, though. Tampa also one of the best teams at limiting tight end production. So I talked about where the money is going in terms of Kyle Pitts over-unders. Let's talk about the betting splits for the game, though. Public favoring the Bucs to cover, and like I mentioned earlier, on the money line. A lot of bets on the over as well. One standout prop, we've been talking about him, Bijan Robinson to go over his rush yards prop, but only 47% of the handle is that way. For more on where liability is at tonight, we bring in Captain Book.
Don't call it a comeback, Scotty. Kirk's been here for years. That's right, it's Thursday night, baby, and the football betting public has jumped all on board the pirate ship. Not the Sharps, though, as their Bucs are back in the captain tonight at the Benz, and that news has this captain and the book beaming. Sure, Baker slid into Tom Brady's spot and has been cashing like an ATM since he signed with Tampa. 67% against the spread since the start of 2023. Those numbers led early bettors to fire on the Bucs as the number came from -3 to -1.5, but it's back to -2 and likely closer to -2.5, closer to kick. Everyone knows Kirk's had quite a trek across primetime games in his career, but he's getting a lot more comfortable under the lights. With solid outings already on Monday and Sunday this season, smart money says Mommy's Dirty Bird is poised for a big night. And if that's the case, the book will be fired up like an ATL after party. Hey Kirk, bring out the chain, baby, and let those Tampa fans hear it one more time. You like that?
Did he just say?
We like people to grow into their roles on Pregame Power.
Mommy's Dirty Birds?
Mommy's Dirty Birds are high on the Falcons. Yeah,
Never say that again.
Be who you are.
I
Be who
guess,
you are,
man.
Captain
I
Book.
don't know.
You know, let's bring in someone who has always been who he is,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Joining us now from the DraftKings Trade Floor in Las Vegas, former NFL wide receiver who played for the Falcons, Mike Pritchard. Mike, when you look at this offense here, first and foremost, we talked about the lack of offensive touchdowns or offensive scores. What to you is the biggest concern?
Well, I think it's a common theme, Trey, in terms of what the beginning of the season has been for the National Football League. And that's the fact that nobody really runs in preseason. You got a new offensive coordinator, you got a new quarterback, you got a new system. You got to get some run in the preseason, at least to find out where you are. But the Falcons elected not to do that. They wanted to make sure that they were going to stay healthy during the season. So it's growing pains. I think they'll get better as the season progresses. But right now they are struggling a little bit.
Mike, I have to ask you, you played for the Falcons, drafted by him.
Yes.
Did you ever get that nickname tossed your way, Mommy's Dirty Birds?
No, Claudia, we were too legit to quit. I can go too legit to quit. We can do that. They turned into the Dirty Birds sometime after I left Atlanta.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's talk about more of these struggles for the Falcons. Pitts specifically, we just talked about. And it's not just this year, okay? The play hasn't really been there. We can talk about the separation issues, whatever it is. He averaged just 3 catches and under 40 yards last year. So if you had to pinpoint what the major issue with Kyle Pitts is, what would you say it is?
That he's playing the true tight end position. Zach Robinson, he's come over for Atlanta. This whole team, or certainly this whole game, is themed at LA right now because of certainly McVay and the trade that he has right there. But Robinson is not utilizing the skill set of Pitts. He's got him lined up as a conventional tight end, and he's not comfortable at all. Just watching him on tape, he's not explosive. He's not confident. He's dropping a rock. I think they need to split him out. I think they need to move him around. I think they need to be creative and create one-on-ones, and then we'll see the real Kyle Pitts. If we don't see that, then I don't think this Atlanta Falcons offense is going to evolve at all.
All right, let's talk about the other offense in this game, and that's Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. And they were humming early in the first half last week against the Eagles. I think at one point they had over 255 offensive yards, and the Eagles had 0, squat, bupkis, nil, nada, zip, zilch. How much of their success is because of those 2 great targets that Baker has to throw to, not only Mike Evans, but Chris Godwin?
A lot of other success is because of those guys. I mean, Mike Evans, he's a Hall of Famer, I think.
Absolutely.
The streak that he's on, absolutely, right? The streak that he's on is incredible. The touchdown machine that he is in the red zone. And Godwin's that great compliment because he can be inside, he can be outside, you can move him around as well. I think Cohen, with the same scheme, is more creative than Robinson. They run identical schemes here in this game. So Baker also got a taste of this scheme when he was in LA. He was highly confident, certainly brought that to Tampa. And so he's playing great football too with those 2 wide receivers.
Yeah, Mike Evans, by the way, 10 straight years or 10 straight seasons with at least 1,000 yards consecutively. Only Jerry Rice has more at 14.
During this conversation, guys, and the same with Marshall, we seem to be, pointing out a lot of bad parts of the Atlanta Falcons, a lot of shiny parts for the Bucs, yet the Falcons are the favorite in this spot. The money is coming in on the Bucs. So, Mike, I'll ask you, which side do you agree with there?
Well, I like the Bucs. I'm a dog batter. The only pause I have or reservation would be the fact that they're on the road. Both of these teams have had the comfort of being at home. Look at Atlanta, another home game, right? But Tampa did play well against Detroit. Tampa also knows that Atlanta can take command of the division, having beat the Saints as well. So this is a huge game for Tampa. Therefore, I do like the Bucs in dog situation.
In this situation, we've talked a lot, Pritch, about the Falcons' primetime games. 13 straight Falcon primetime games have gone under. But bettors like the over tonight?
I can see how you can get to the over just because, you look at these offenses and the explosive nature that they could have in this game. There's so much familiarity, though, like I mentioned. Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson, Cohen, all these guys were in LA. They know each other so much, but it's going to be determined on the field by the players, obviously. So I can see how the over can cash in this one. I'm not a total bettor, but I can see how bettors like the over, though, in this one.
Just real quickly, we talked a little bit earlier with Marshall Newhouse about how sort of statuesque in the pocket Kirk Cousins has been.
Yeah.
If you know that going into this game from a defensive standpoint, look, he's not moving between the tackles. Does it change how you want to attack him? Do you want to try and get more pressure right up in his face instead of worrying about coming around from the outside?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you can disrupt the receivers too off the line of scrimmage. And if Pitts is at a tight end position, certainly bottle him up. Right? And London on the outside. Just jam them at the line of scrimmage. Let your pass rush get home. I think that's going to be the game plan for Bowles in that Tampa Bay defense.
I like to ask players this because from the media side of things, we like to watch quarterbacks after an injury and say, okay, 3 weeks in, he looks better. And I don't want to have too much Kirk talk, but I'm curious from you watching him, does he really look that much more comfortable over the last 4 weeks? Or do you still think there's a major issue there with the Achilles?
I don't know if it's the injury, Claudia, but I think it's more that he hasn't had a lot of run in this offense. Some of these tight throws, those tight window throws, he's hesitant. he's having a second thought, right? And that can lead to some trouble, some problems, a sack or a pick. So hopefully as time goes on for Kirk and he gets more and more comfortable with this offense, that'll disappear.
All right, Pritch, thanks very much. We'll see what happens going forward as we look forward to this NFC South showdown between the Falcons and the Bucs. You know, Claudia, when you look at this, you mentioned it, it does seem like we're sort of heavy on all these great things for Tampa Bay, but the Falcons can really stake a claim and put their flag, and hey, with the division wins in our column, this could be a huge swing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not that they don't have the talent either.
Right.
I think that's why I asked the question about Kirk Cousins. We knew that he's a good quarterback. There's a reason they paid him all that money and brought him in. He has good, talented receivers, good weapons around him. I think it's just a matter of this team really finding their identity, and maybe this is a good spot for them to do that. It wasn't long ago, although I've been very high in the Bucs squad, we saw what the Broncos did to them, okay?
Right.
With a rookie quarterback and an offense that really has less of an identity. So there is a possibility.
But everyone's going to have a clunker, right? In the 17-game season, I guarantee you every team is going to have one or two games you're like, what the hell was that?
Yes.
Like, how could you do what the Bucs did, go into Detroit, avenge that? Because we saw how explosive Detroit was at home on Monday night against Seattle, and then you come home and you let Bo Nix do that? Like, there are going to be 2 games for every team this year. We'll just be like, what did I just see?
Yes.
Kind of like what we saw Buffalo do against the Ravens and Derrick Henry on Sunday night.
Yes, exactly. And the Saints, one squad that came out and scored like crazy in those first 2 games, they have one clunker and everyone's like, I knew it. They were never going to be that good. People, we're 5 weeks in. You can't overreact, but you can't underreact.
Yeah, it's a long season. And just one more thing, as Pritch was talking about Hall of Fame status for Mike Evans, I think he is truly one of the most underappreciated receivers of his generation, because you never hear, Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb and Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Okay, we mentioned the 1,000-yard season streak, 10 straight to start his career. Only Jerry Rice has a longer streak of 14 in the history of the NFL. Here's the other thing that's amazing about Mike Evans. In the history of the NFL, there are 3 non-kickers that at one point in one season have led their team in scoring. It's Hall of Famer Jerry Rice, Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith, and will-be Hall of Famer Mike Evans. That's how productive he's been.
Yeah, and I mean, Chris Godwin on the other side, really can't lose. When we come back, they let Emerson go to Atlanta. Why?
Great question.
We'll see. There's not a lot of people out there. We'll see how the tailgate situation is.
Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Welcome back to Pregame Power Up, presented by Campbell's Chunky. As you know, it is soup that eats like a meal. Falcons are 1-2 in their building this season. Games here have been averaging just about 39 points per, and the under is 2-1 in those 3 games. Tampa Bay has only started 4-1 or better 3 times since 2000. 2002, they won the Super Bowl, and also 2005 and 2021. And teams that start 4-1 make the playoffs under the current playoff format, which we technically date back to 1990, even though we changed it with a 7th seed a few years ago, about 78% of the time. For more on what to expect tonight in Atlanta, let's go back out to Emerson Latzia. Emerson, can you hear me among the din of the crowd roaring behind you as you get set for this game?
What's that, Trey? I'm going to need you to speak up. I can't hear you. There's so many people out here. No, but for real, it's a little more quiet than what I'm used to, a little different compared to last week in New Jersey when the guy invited me to his funeral. So in preparations for this show, for this road trip here, we're always talking about how can we mingle and hang out with the fans. And so I started talking to people who live here, people who have lived here, and they've all kind of cackled in my face and said, dude, they don't really tailgate. What they do is they take public transportation and then they walk. It's this long path behind me from a public transportation station. And I said, there's no way. The people in Atlanta are better than that. So we hit the mean streets of Atlanta, a little bit yesterday, a little bit today, and this is what we found out. What do people do here on game days?
Drink.
How much?
A lot.
What do you do on game days around here? What do people in Atlanta do?
Well, you got a lot of stuff to do now.
Okay. Here, tailgating's not super huge around here.
It is. It's just in certain spots.
As newcomers to Atlanta, what should we be doing before the game?
Getting ready for it.
Well, how do I get ready for it?
Get your meat, get the grill ready, get everything ready. If you're gonna tailgate, get your shirts, your jerseys, and all of the above.
Why would you not tailgate?
Tailgate, you gotta have a car.
Yeah.
And if they catch me driving.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, especially because you like beer so much. You don't want to be behind the wheel.
Yeah, if they catch me driving, I'm going to prison.
Where is everybody? I have no idea. Jerome, where are all the tailgaters out here? You're like solo, dude.
They work and still at work.
Oh, man. What'd you do? You called in sick? Don't worry, no one will see this.
I'm retired.
Oh, nice, nice. As guys who have been to stadiums all over the country, how would you describe the tailgating right now in Atlanta?
Actually, it's early.
Yeah.
I hope that will be funnier or more fun. I don't know.
Folks, we have done it. We have struck gold. This is Christmas in October. We have found tailgaters outside Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They do tailgate here in Atlanta. You guys getting set and ready to rock for some tailgating?
Every home game, we here.
How would you describe the typical Falcons tailgater?
Oh, it's awesome. Our tailgates are off the chain.
What makes Falcons fans good tailgaters? You tell me.
Good food, good fun, and a lot of scenery.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like what? Go, do tell.
Do tell.
Okay.
Oh, like the amount of people that come through here, the ladies and how they dress, and just seeing all the Falcons fans.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
What would you guys suggest to Falcons fans in terms of stepping up their tailgating game here a little bit? Arrive earlier. Arrive earlier, yeah. You have a message for the haters, for people outside Atlanta, say you guys don't know how to tailgate, even though this is an incredible setup already?
The message is, come see what it's like to be a little Southern hospitality.
Everybody be hating on us because they say we're sometime fans, but when we're diehards, and we have fun, and when we win it, we really hype.
You need to come to Atlanta and see the tailgating we do for real.
They're some of the nicest people I've come across since we started traveling for these games. The Southern hospitality is off the charts. Listen, they're hard workers. It's a Thursday, and if you bang out sick today on a Thursday, that means you can't post any games you can't post any pics tailgating or from inside the game here. That means you got to show up to work hungover on Friday. And trust me, that is not fun, Trey. But the people are super kind.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anything about showing up to work hungover. All right, Emerson, thanks very much. The scenery, I guess, is you have ability to see things like trees and parks because there's not as many people.
Yeah. Well, Trey, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
They're so nice. I got this shirt here, this 28-3 shirt.
Nice.
You know, I was going to try to have some fun with it. Yeah.
You couldn't do it?
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. There's a Falcons fan standing to the left of me. I know he just gave me the death stare. But I'm talking to these fans. The Super Bowl comes up every once in a while in these conversations. I said, well, damn, man, what was it like after that game? And he said in the saddest voice ever, he's like, man, we just went home and went to bed. And I said, okay, I'm going to tuck this shirt back into my backpack now and not twist the knife. So great people here in Atlanta. Here Sundays are a lot crazier than these Thirsty Thursdays.
All right, Emerson, thanks very much. Emerson Lazio reporting on the tailgate situation in Atlanta. You know, I guess you have to, it's all perspective, right? Like, you can go to a tailgate in Atlanta and really have a Zen moment.
I guess so.
I mean, you can find your inner peace at a Falcons tailgate.
I can't relate. I've been to the most Buffalo Bills and Patriots games, and I don't think it matters if tomorrow's the most important day of your life. It could be your wedding day, and Pats fans are still going to be out there. I'm surprised he didn't get the bird, by the way, holding up that shirt.
Thursday night opener in Kansas City, there were people lined up at 5 a.m. to go into the ballpark.
People are
5 a.m. I had respect for that.
Yes, I have respect for that too. A player I have a lot of respect for, but his current team does not, is Davante Adams, man. The Raiders star wideout told the team he would rather be traded than play another snap for Las Vegas. But this comes, and this is important, after head coach Antonio Pierce appeared to like a social media post suggesting Adams could be on the move. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport is reporting that the Jets would be Adams' preferred landing spot, which makes sense. He'd be reunited with longtime Packers teammate Aaron Rodgers. Thinking about another team? Well, you can actually bet on it at the DraftKings Sportsbook. We do have odds up right now, and no surprise, the Jets are the favorite at -150. You got the Saints up there, Commanders, Steelers, Raiders, Cowboys, another team I'm seeing tossed around here. The Jets would make sense, though.
Well, they would, but they're going to have to do something with that contract because nobody is I mean, he has no guaranteed money on his next 2 years of that contract, 2025, 2026. He's not going to go for that trade without reworking the deal, and the Jets still haven't done a deal for Hassan Reddick. So
this is true. I'm trying to imagine what Hassan Reddick wants and why they didn't figure that out before he got there. But you would think the sort of power, you said it, Aaron Rodgers is really the guy in charge over there. He brought in Lazard, he brought in Nathaniel Hackett. Why not just get the whole crew together?
I mean, at this point, Hassan Reddick might as well have just taken $9 million and burned it on fire.
Or given it to me, or charity.
It makes no sense. Let's see if we can bring in someone who might make sense of this. A guy who played with Aaron Rodgers among the many stops he had in the NFL, offensive lineman Marshall Newhouse. You, of course, also knew him as a member of the Lake Highlands Horticultural Society at Lake Highlands High School. You're welcome, Marshall. Listen, what is your take on how this is going to end up with Davante? Because it has gotten weird, right? When your head coach likes something about somebody requesting a trade, and Antonio Pierce, as you well know, is an unconventional guy, took an unconventional route to being a head coach in the NFL. How do you think this ends?
Well, first of all, I want to say, Trey, thank you for showing me your Wikipedia skills. There's a lot of story that to be told about all these facts you're dropping on me, but I digress. Yeah, this Davante Adams thing, it reminds me of just a relationship. Once you start talking about a breakup, or if you're married, the dreaded D word, things are already on the out and out. And now that we're tracking a head coach's social media activity, that's not even like apparent. You have to search to see who likes something. It's just all out of bounds. And so I think he's out of there because he's mentally and emotionally out of there already. And so unfortunately, he's going to be on the move. But it depends on how much, to me, the Jets are willing to go all in further than they've gone all in. Because as you mentioned, Claudia, Aaron Rodgers is more or less running the show there. And I don't know how much more they have to leverage, but as you mentioned, there's money tied, future money potentially in a new contract extension that comes with this Davante Adams potential trade. And so, they're leading in the odds, but how committed are they, the Jets, to actually making this thing happen and going on a run? Because there's a lot of things that weigh in the balance.
And, beating the Broncos probably could have helped their situation, which they did not. But they move on to take on a scorching hot Viking squad with Sam Darnold at the helm. They are 4-0. These are two players. Aaron Rodgers came out as the favorite comeback player of the year. Sam Darnold shooting his way up that board. So they are the two favorites right now. Who are you giving the edge to, Marshall, in that race and in this game coming up in London?
Well, listen, I have, firsthand experience playing with Aaron Rodgers and seeing just his greatness at an upfront, close level. And I'm attached, as I think a lot of people are, to the lore of what he has been and what we think he still might be. But when we're talking comeback player of the year, to me, it's Darnold. And it's more because of what Darnold is surrounded with. How many times have we already said that Coach Kevin O'Connell and defensive coordinator Brian Flores are coaching their ass off? How many times can you say that about Robert Saleh and Nathaniel Hackett? And so, to me, Sam Darnold has the better situation around him. And to me, that's what's allowing him to have this margin of error where he's playing his best ball of his career.
Yeah, and he's only 27. He's essentially the same age as Joe Burrow. Like, sometimes we forget how young these guys are, like you were when you came into the league. Sometimes it takes a little time to find your footing. You mentioned lore, right? There's a lot of lore around the Kansas City Chiefs. And if this wasn't the Chiefs, and knowing that they're back-to-back Super Bowl champs, they've won 3, they've been to 4 of the last 5, people would be saying, how in the hell is this team 4-0? Yet they have found a way to win. They make winning plays at the end of the games. They might have gotten some good news this week, Marshall. We still don't know what the entire injury is with Rashee Rice. They haven't been able to determine whether or not that ACL is torn. They have him on injured reserve. What's your level of concern about Kansas City as they try and continue to just sort of win in the most weird ways possible?
It's twofold. In the long term, there's not much concern. In the short term, yeah, you're trying to figure out who is Patrick Mahomes having to throw the ball to because he can't throw it to himself. And so I think we'll see a reawakening of Travis Kelce as he kind of gets in rhythm. He's had a slow start, but I think it's just a timing thing. And then we'll see how they adapt. They have become and proven that they're the most adaptable team at offense in the league. There's a reason they're 4-0, and it's not looked pretty. I think Andy Reid would take that all day, every day. And there's a reason that the GM, Brett Veach, has built the team the way he has, because they can sustain these things. There was that year, I think it was 2 years ago, we were talking about what's wrong with Patrick Mahomes. Everyone's playing too high coverage. He's having to dink and dunk the ball. He lost Tyreek Hill. And what did they do? Nothing else than to go win a Super Bowl, figuring it out. They are the most adaptable. I'm not worried.
Yeah, remember when we thought Tyreek Hill? Oh, there goes Patrick Mahomes.
41 touchdowns that year for Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, sports books know all of this about Patrick Mahomes, about the Chiefs, and liability is a word we talk about a lot. There is a reason, despite the Chiefs not looking pretty, not the sexiest wins, they remain the favorite to win the AFC, to win the whole shebang, and of course, Patrick Mahomes remained the favorite to win MVP. But that means there may be some value elsewhere on the board. I keep talking about that fact. I want to fade the Chiefs because I'm sick of the Chiefs. Mahomes, too, though, at the top of the board gives value to players like Josh Allen. Yeah, coming from a Patriots fan. Josh Allen's up there. You have Jaden Daniels with the Commanders, who has been so impressive. He's taken the most bets this week. Is there anybody on this board, Marshall, that really stands out to you that you think has a legitimate chance of winning?
Give me Josh Allen at the moment. He's just having to do the most for his team to win. He can do it with his arm and his legs, and that'll determine a lot on how he does in the postseason. But I want to get off of the Jaden Daniels hype train because I love him as a player, as a rookie. But where did we come from him being second in MVP voting? Listen, he's playing well. Cliff Kingsbury's designed his offense to suit his strengths, but he is 4 years in to his rookie campaign. If there was a stock to short, I'd short it. I think he's going to be exceptional, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Give me Josh Allen.
Yeah, Allen's probably the smart conventional play, but it's just Jaden has been so off the charts in some of the things he's done. But you're right, let's slow the hype train. All right, Marshall, thanks. The pride of TCU. We'll see you next time on the Pregame PowerUp. When we come back, we'll close out the show with who people like to find in the end zone tonight and draw some conclusions about everything we learned today. But first, the official pick on who will score tonight, Next Gen Cats. There's Drake London. There's the Bucs running back Bucky Irving. Where's our famous feline going?
Okay.
Where'd she land on? It's Drake London, ladies and gentlemen, who did score in a primetime game earlier this season against the Chiefs. So we'll see what happens.
Plus 850. There we go.
Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal.
Welcome back to the Pregame Power Up presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Here's who bettors like to score tonight. Bijan, the favorite and most bet player on the board. The normal cast of characters up there. People pretty high on Bucky Irving to find the end zone yet again this week. For more on how people are betting tonight, here is a DKN social media correspondent, Megan Townsley, with the latest from the DK Sportsbook betting groups.
There's already a ton of action in the DraftKings Sportsbook betting groups for Thursday Night Football tonight. And let me say, the people are loving Baker Mayfield tonight, starting with Bill Yin in the DK Network betting group. He's rolling with Baker to throw 225 plus passing yards. And also Megan Teskey in that same group, she's riding with that pick, but she's also parlaying that with Darnold Mooney 50 plus receiving yards. Okay, I did say that everyone's loving Baker. That may have been a little bit of an exaggeration because looking at the Bleacher Report betting group, Ryan Rubrio thinks that Baker will throw less than 1.5 passing touchdowns. Fair bet right there. I'm not mad about that. He's got 7 people tailing that. And if you want to be one of them, go ahead and open up the DraftKings Sportsbook, click on the social tab at the top, and then click on betting groups, and you can find the Bleacher Report, Barstool, or even the DK Network betting group. A couple years ago, I never would have thought I'd see so much Baker Mayfield support in one place, but that's why these groups are so entertaining, and make sure you go check them out before the game kicks off tonight.
Megan, thanks very much. Anything in there that struck your fancy?
Well, may I tempt you with a K. Dalton touchdown?
Please.
Plus 360, third on the team in targets, just 2 less red zone targets than Mike Evans, and he's the unsuspecting guy. You're getting some good value. That's a sprinkle. That's a beer money play, people. But not one of the names up on the board, so you get good value.
It's a BMP, a beer money play.
Ah.
You're welcome. It's a BMP from Claudia B. That's exactly what that is.
God.
All right, we talked about Baker Mayfield there for a minute. Let's take a little
Yeah.
further into what we expect and could expect from Baker Mayfield. Again, Baker Mayfield threw for 347 yards and all those tutties in the Bucs win over Philadelphia. Mayfield now has an NFL-high 5 games with at least 300 passing yards and 2 touchdowns since Week 15 of last season. The 300-yard passer has been a rarity in the NFL this season. So far during 2024, we've had just 15 quarterbacks throw for 300 passing yards. Those 15 QBs are 6-9 straight up and just 3-11-1 against the spread. Through the first 2 weeks, we've only had 5 quarterbacks throw for 300 or more yards, and none of those teams covered. It is interesting to see how this sort of trend is playing out because over the last 6 or 7 seasons, Claudia, it has been Points-A-Palooza, Madden ball, fantasy football out there for a lot of things. And I think the defensive coaches in the NFL have caught up and found ways to slow things down. A lot of that has to do with the 2 high safety concept. But we are certainly not seeing the points, the production, the air yards. I mean, outside of the Saints' first 2 games when they scored 91 points, we really haven't had those offensive showcases that we've been used to over the last 4, 5, 6 seasons.
Well, you have to just ban 2 high safeties. Come on, you know this, Trey, right? Just ban it. Get rid of it.
My good friend Mel Kiper Jr. actually proposed that. I'm like,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mel, yeah.
How about no?
That
No.
created an onslaught. No,
Yeah.
honestly, I love it because that shows you how much talent a quarterback does have despite that sort of coverage. You know, there's a reason we talked about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and how much they help each other. That shows how good of a quarterback Baker Mayfield is. You can have great receivers, but that doesn't mean you're going to get them the ball. But Baker Mayfield has the talent, so I like the Bucs a lot in this spot. I think Baker is a huge part of their success.
All right, again, the Bucs come in at 3-1. The Falcons come in at 2-2. And here's why this is a huge game specifically for the Atlanta Falcons. Again, the playoff format data goes back to 1990, even though we added a 7th seed a couple of years ago. If you start 3-2 since 1990, you make the playoffs just about 50% of the time, 49.7. But if you fall to 2-3, that falls to 23% of the time. It happens, but your odds cut basically more than in half. The difference between starting 3-2 and starting 2-3. So that's why it is a huge game tonight at home for the Atlanta Falcons. We'll see what happens. For Claudia Bellafato, for Emerson Latzia, still looking for tailgaters, Marshall Newhouse, and everybody else in the show, thanks for watching the Pregame Power Up, presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal.